Hi, my name is Ophi YouTube Videos. I am a feminist and a lesbian, and I'm actually planning on talking about the Hunger Games a whole lot more on this channel in the future because it was a very, very foundational piece of media for me in a lot of ways. But if everything goes according to plan, the day I'm uploading this should be Katniss Everdeen's birthday, and I love Katniss Everdeen. I would like to talk about Katniss Everdeen, please. I've got another video in the pipes and partially scripted called A Decade Late Defense of Peeta Mellark, and I think, there might even be more meat on that bone in terms of things that the movies completely ruined or left out altogether. But being just completely honest here, I thought I would have time to reread at least the first book before Katniss's birthday popped up, and then this year has snuck by very quickly so far. So I haven't reread The Hunger Games for this video or in a few years, but I have read it many times, and I've also written, significantly upwards of 500,000 words in Hunger Games fanfiction that is mostly deleted by now. All of this to say, The Hunger Games is a very important book series to me, and, I'll get into that more when I talk about the utter humiliation of having vocally been a PETA girly and then having to, pretend like I was on board with Josh Hutcherson as my favorite character once he was cast, even though he kind of looks like Squirtle. I'll make that video at some point, but the first movie I think is near horrifically wrong in terms of casting, adaptational choices, focus that is chosen to be given to certain characters and not to others. I don't love the movies in general. I will make an allowance for the fact that I think Catching Fire is both a genuinely amazing adaptation and just a good damn movie. It's the only one of the original series that I've willingly come back to since the last time I saw Mockingjay Part 2 when it was still in theaters. If you are less familiar with the history of the Hunger Games movie franchise than me, the first movie, I can summarize the differences between that and the rest of the series pretty quickly because the first one was directed by this man named Gary Ross. And Gary Ross was obsessed with shaking the camera really, really badly so that it made everyone in the audience feel sick. Gary Ross made one cool choice that I still like. He had them have complete and utter silence after the countdown in the arena. But other than that, I think nearly every single choice Gary Ross made to adapt the first Hunger Games movie was garbage. It was really bad. I didn't think that the first time I saw it. The first time I saw it, I was, an existing fan of the books, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is kind of like what I pictured, but not really. But the older I get, the less I like the first Hunger Games movie. I think it's really bad, actually. Shaky Cam man Gary Ross was replaced with a man named Francis Lawrence, who directed Catching Fire and then Mockingjay Part 1 and 2, as well as the prequel movie A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which I actually really liked. I have always thought Francis Lawrence has a much more full-seeming understanding of the books and what they were attempting to do than Gary Ross did. He was, I think, a little bit very up his own ass about making a war movie in a way that I think Mockingjay Part 1 and 2 were a little self-congratulatory, but also they were always going to have to be because that was the end goal of the Hunger Games series. It was here's this special chosen teenager one story. Just kidding. There's a lot of this that we can apply to the real world, and also there are big consequences to a big war with a big figurehead. I think Mockingjay Part 1 and 2 always were going to be pretty tonally different than the first two movies. If I was directing, which would never happen, I would maybe even have split Catching Fire into two movies and then Mockingjay into one. I know a lot happens in Mockingjay, but it's a long book and it made for a very long two movies, and Oh, I'm gonna talk about splitting Mockingjay Part 1 and 2 whenever I make the PETA video, because it just like they split it on Katniss being like domestically assaulted by her partner, which yes happens in the book after he's like brainwashed, but like the hijacking is so mishandled in the movies, and PETA didn't even have like an existing characterization before he was hijacked, so like it's bad. It's I This is supposed to be the Katniss video, though, so I'm not completely going to be talking about how much I hate what the movies did to my beautiful, beautiful favorite boy, Peeta Mellark. I will say, though, like, something fundamentally missing from most of the movies. They are in love. They're in love with each other. From the first arena, the cave, like, I genuinely, this doesn't matter, like, probably like even people who do like Katniss and Peeta have different reads for when they were in love, but I think Katniss was in much deeper by the time of the cave than she ever gets in the entirety of the movies, even when we're meant to believe that she had his babies, which are two boys for some reason, because it was more important to put Josh Hutcherson's nephews in the movie than it was to like be accurate to what happened in the books. So obviously I am a great big bitch about these movies. I wanted to love them. I loved them as they were coming out when I was a teenager. I do not like them as an adult, or, the longer I sit with them. One of the first things, Jennifer Lawrence just was not the correct choice to portray Katniss Everdeen. And the first thing that pops into my mind about that, one of the first things, is that she compared Katniss and her character in the movie Winter's Bone to each other and called them both white trash with too much responsibility, which I hate. But also, like, Jennifer Lawrence was so overpraised, I think, for the acting in these movies. Not like compared to what she's capable of, but compared to who Katniss was in the books. So other than white trash with too much responsibility, which its own whole thing. But other than that, think about maybe the scene at the end of Catching Fire. In the book and in the movie, Katniss has just been rescued from the Quarter Quell arena. She's injured, confused, disoriented. She wants to go home, and Gale tells her, "Katniss, there is no District 12." And that is the end of the second book. Like, we don't see Katniss's response to it because we are in her head. We're looking out through her eyes as Gale says, "There is no District 12." So, like, that's it. That's just where it ends. And of course, they have to have some, like, ending for the movie beyond just Gale saying that. So, Katniss does, like, Kimmy Schmidt face acting and fast forwards through several months of character development by way of face journey so that Jennifer Lawrence can show off her acting chops or whatever. And do I get what they're going for? Yeah, I do. Oh, she just heard that her whole town has been burnt down, which also, like, I'm fine with it in the context of the book because the conversation doesn't end. Like, the book ends. So, like, at some point, everything else about District 12 being destroyed is explained. But, like, it acts as if Katniss would immediately understand what there is no District 12 means, which I don't buy that she immediately would be like, oh, that means it got firebombed. But second of all, like, Katniss Everdeen is not, like, make an angry bitch face because she's upset about something. Like, it's not Katniss. I don't know who it is. I don't know who makes that face at the end of the Catching Fire movie, but it's not Katniss. And I'm not even saying Katniss never gets mad, but, like, Katniss's anger response doesn't kick in until Mockingjay. That is much of the journey of Mockingjay, because Katniss has always been like a chess piece who's been moved around on this board. And you end the Catching Fire movie by, like, making it look like Katniss has just, like, fast forwarded through all of this development and is ready to, like, start being her own, like, figurehead, starting to, like, get on board with the revolution. But then, like, because she's Katniss and because the books are already written not with the Jennifer Lawrence version of this character, the next movie starts and she's like way back from before when she did the bitch face. And sure, that kind of thing is not entirely linear. Katniss is grieving and like separated from Peeta and everything, but like it just, as your bookend to movie 2 and then beginning movie 3, like it does not make sense. It does not give the audience something to latch onto in Katniss, because Katniss is like kind of fucking inscrutable in the movies in the way that she's just not in the books. Like, yes, in the book she is unreliable and she doesn't always make the best decisions and she can't even always explain why she makes decisions that she does, but she's not inscrutable. She's like a very real girl who you know and can understand and empathize with. And in the movie, she's Jennifer Lawrence. So because she gets to end with like making that righteous bitch face to get people hyped about what was going to come, you know, it didn't matter that that was fundamentally unfaithful to the character of Katniss Everdeen, because it was true to the Jennifer Lawrence Katniss Everdeen. Because to me, Jennifer Lawrence is not Katniss Everdeen. And the reason that that whole white trash with too much responsibility line bothers me too much is one you might already know if you spent any time with the Hunger Games books, but Katniss is very heavily implied not to be white. Like, her mother and sister are white, but Katniss is referred to with olive skin, and her particular combination of olive skin and gray eyes is referred to as seam coloring, which the seam is a part of District 12 said to be, like, covered in a fine layer of coal dust. District 12 is a coal mining town in what is almost certainly Appalachia. If you didn't already know, when Suzanne Collins reads out loud for Katniss, she puts on what I think is like a genuinely deeply charming drawl, but is not something I hear in my head. I'll pull a clip in.
I stare down at my shoes, watching as a fine layer of ash settles on the worn leather.
Anyway, with the description of, you know, the differences between her and her fair white sister, her olive skin, you know, a lot of people identified Katniss as being a person of color, and a lot of people also never really thought about it, or they thought olive meant like tan Italian person. So once Jennifer Lawrence dyed her hair for the role, they stopped like thinking about what a miscast she is. She also got a lot of positive press for refusing to diet for the Hunger Games film, and I agree that they shouldn't have needed to cast somebody who looked actively emaciated, but like, the fact that Jennifer Lawrence as Katniss looks neither particularly hungry or particularly young really knocks away some of the defining character features just right off the bat, again, in terms of the audience struggling to connect with her. She didn't need to be skinny. I mean, the argument can be made that because she hunts and barters, Katniss and her sister probably eat better than most people in the district, even before she wins the games and comes home a victor. But, you know, she begins the book at 16 years old and looks young. Like, after she wins her first games, Haymitch has to argue not to have her breasts augmented, and Katniss says her dresses are, like, made with curves built in to try to make her appear more mature and developed, even though she's like emaciated from the arena and also probably life before the arena too. Katniss has been hungry her whole life. Like, I've never believed this girl had a regular period or the ability to go through a typical puberty. She was supposed to be 16, but Jennifer Lawrence was 20 years old the first time she played Katniss, compared to Willow Shields, who plays her younger sister Prim, meant to be just 4 years younger than Katniss. Willow Shields was actually 11, and Katniss just does not read as a kid who is only 4 years older than that 11-year-old. Like, there were probably a lot of reasons for this casting. I'm definitely not saying I could act the part better. I'm just saying that I really don't think Jennifer Lawrence manages a convincing scared kid impression the entirety of the series. And probably that comes from having not read the books, because that's what Katniss fundamentally is. Me saying I don't think Jennifer Lawrence read the books probably sounds really mean, but I have this working theory that very few actors on the set actually read the books. Like, Josh Hutcherson, I am very sure has never read those books. Jennifer Lawrence, again, I would be incredibly surprised. Donald Sutherland, he read those books. Not a single doubt in my mind. I'm fairly certain he also wrote fan fiction. I'm pretty sure that he's the reason that we got the Songbirds and Snakes prequel book. Kind of like how I think it was because of Anne Dowd that we got the Testaments so many years after Margaret Atwood had been done with writing The Handmaid's Tale. That's just my hot take, though. Whether or not Jennifer Lawrence read the book, though, Katniss is a child, and she's probably not white at all. She's definitely not white trash with too much responsibility. She's a child. She's a child who is again and again put into situations that she doesn't fully understand or have full context for, because nobody trusts her enough to clue her into this plan that she's being used as a crucial piece in, or cares enough to keep her in the loop about what kind of danger they're putting her in, because she's a valuable figurehead that they can use as a dress-up doll, and she'll just love them anyway because she is a vulnerable child. I think Cinna is kind of a piece of shit. I got into a lot of trouble on Tumblr for saying that as a teenager. A bunch of people were like reblogging posts about how terrible I am. I like Lenny Kravitz. I just think that Cinna was no less manipulative towards Katniss than Haymitch was. And everybody is a lot quicker to like say Haymitch was really manipulative and bad, but like if Katniss was asked, if Lenny but like if Katniss was asked, if Cinna said, do you want this wedding dress to turn into the Mockingjay, and do you want the extra level of like threat and danger that is going to put onto your sister, Katniss would have said no. So he didn't ask, he just did it. I think Cinna liked Katniss. I think he liked her. I think he liked what she could represent as the Mockingjay. But I think that because Cinna died the way that he did and in front of Katniss in a way that was orchestrated for her to feel guilty about and orchestrated to put her off kilter before she went into the arena, like, she was never gonna think through that deeply enough to be like, oh, Cinna was manipulating me this whole time. Like, the audience kind of has to piece that together, but because Katniss is so biased towards Cinna, I guess not everybody else also pieced that together. You can like Cinna as much as you want to. I just find him manipulative. And Effie Trinket, who I also think is all kinds of wrong in the movies. I like movie Effie Trinket. She's not book Effie Trinket. She's Elizabeth Banks having fun. But, Effie takes Katniss on a ride in an elevator in the Capitol in the first book, and it's, like, fast. And Katniss, like, finds it thrilling and wants to ask to ride it again. And Katniss, like, used to get in trouble with her mother for making necklaces out of rope, like in the Hanging Tree song. She was doing crafts. So that song didn't sound sad and, like, low and mournful, and also did not sound like whatever the fuck the dance remix we got was. What was that about? Why would they do that? But, like, that's not how the song should have sounded. It should have sounded like a folk song. Like, why would she have been making crafts for a song that sounded like it was, like, sad? Like, in the book, she mentions it and says that her mom was like, you can't sing that. Like, it very much sounds like a song that was more morbid than it sounds, but the arrangement in the movie just sounds morbid. But Katniss was, like, a normal kid because she was a person. She was a human. She acted in ways that were very human. When Rue died in the arena, it's, like, framed as this badass act of protest when Katniss covers her in flowers, but the protest itself is happening in the districts. It's ignited by what's actually happening in the arena, which is just Katniss doing the most, like, human person-to-person thing she can to honor this young girl who reminds her so much of her sister. So she gives her this, like, funeral the best that she can, and when she and Peeta have to sit on stage and watch the highlights of the game after they win, she says that part is cut out. Like, the things that made her into the Mockingjay are not the things that are later leaned on when she's the face of the revolution, because nobody, like, understands how to wield that, because it's nothing that she's doing intentionally. She's just a person, and she's a good person who, like, loves people and who people get really genuinely fond of. She, like, hides her face in Peeta's shirt and refuses to come out when she learns that he lost his leg, and her reaction and the loss of his leg are both completely cut from the movie. I can't imagine how humanizing that would have been for Katniss. Or my other favorite cutscene in the hovercraft after they're rescued. She doesn't immediately notice that the doctors trying to restart Peeta's heart aren't just like another threat at another part of the arena. So she like tries to jump at the glass separating them and like startles herself in the mirror with her reflection. By contrast, the Katniss in the movies gets like upset at times to not have been clued in, and she's like a little bit less than ideal as a leader, but she's also so significantly more girl boss than she is in the books. Like, I feel like the version of Katniss presented in the movie is more to blame for the like Triss, Shadow Hunters, bland chosen one, not like other girls protagonist genre down the line once the trend was fully beaten into the ground, which is such a shame to happen to Katniss in particular because Katniss is so special. Katniss Everdeen is so special because she isn't special at all. And she has her very own particular goal. Like in the first book, she wants to get home to her sister, and that goal widens as soon as she learns that she and Peeta can both survive the games. And then that shifts in Catching Fire to, I want to die so Peeta can be the one to survive. And that shifts again in Mockingjay to like a full lack of regard for her own life, very little autonomy, because while she was focused on those goals, everyone else around her was also focused on their own goals, and she got swept up into being the figurehead of this whole thing she barely even knew was happening. I think a lot about how Katniss Everdeen, the character who we spend 3 books in the head of, who has been like in love with Peeta since the cave, I'm not arguing about it. She's been very like maternal and protective over other people. She gets like a quiet life and babies after everything that she suffers through. Also, I do think that that whole it took me 5, 10, 15 years to agree but Peeta wanted them so badly thing does not actually point to Peeta begging her every year for 15 years, because I don't think he would do that. I don't think he, of all people, would want babies who were not wanted. I think Katniss just can't admit to herself that they never would have had babies if she didn't actively want them, because she is an unreliable narrator. Like, it's not out of malice, but it's definitely true that she's an unreliable narrator. That Katniss, the one that we know, she got a happily ever after, or at least as happily ever after as a Hunger Games book can have. My children don't know they play on a graveyard happily ever after, but the Katniss that the people of Panem knew, the victor, the figurehead for the revolution, the Mockingjay, the one speaking in all the propaganda spots on TV throughout the war, the one who was one of the star-crossed lovers from District 12, she didn't really get a happily ever after, did she? Because she wasn't offered any kind of leadership in the new government that was set up with, like, in part her life and her family and her home used as the kindling for this new structure, as many other people who were in less of a, like, visibly assumed to be leadership position during the war itself. The Mockingjay. To the people of Panem, did Katniss Everdeen, the Mockingjay, get a happily ever after? Because I don't think to her fans she did. I think to the people of Panem, the Mockingjay snapped. The Mockingjay shot Alma Coin immediately after voting yes to having more Hunger Games, but with capital children this time, and then she had an extended, maybe sham trial that eventually ended in house arrest in District 12. Her cousin got a job on TV in District 2, and Katniss Everdeen, the Mockingjay, was not heard from again. There's something really interesting about that dichotomy to me. Like, she gets house arrest. It's kind of framed as, like, you know, they were working with her. They knew that that was what she would have wanted anyway. The best that she was going to do if she was going to remain functional was going to be just to return to District 12. And so she does, but, like, everyone had to be assuming that she was going to continue to be in some kind of position of leadership. And I feel like that assumption makes more sense with the movie version of Katniss than it does with the book version. Because I feel like the movie version of Katniss is almost the version that the people in the Capitol had in their head. She's not human. She's not real. She doesn't have real, genuine, like, emotions that I can connect to, because they're not the same ones that I read in the book. And I'm sure lots of people are able to enjoy Jennifer Lawrence as the Katniss from the book, or as, like, a different Katniss. But, like, to me, you know, That's up there with the like tie-in makeup and Subway sandwiches, where it's just like, why is this how you went about that? We could have had like an actual Katniss Everdeen in the movies, and instead we got like a bastardization of her that was so bad that it actively, I think, ruined several years of other teenage protagonist leads in movies. And that's not Suzanne Collins' fault, because Katniss Everdeen herself is great. So, Jennifer Lawrence, you are not my Katniss. I think the fact that it wasn't until after the movies were done that Jennifer Lawrence, like, stopped being a Republican, too, apparently, like, that also makes me feel pretty confident in saying Jennifer Lawrence was not my Katniss Everdeen. What did you think? Did you read the Hunger Games books? Did you like them? Did you feel like Katniss was right in the movies? Do you feel, in retrospect, like you like Jennifer Lawrence less as Katniss now? Did you have another fan cast for Katniss Everdeen? Do you want me to talk more about the Hunger Games in, like, several little videos? Or do you just want, like, a really big, long one? Let me know. I really love talking about this stuff. If you're looking for more videos from me, I have quite a few up on my channel already, or you can find them on my Patreon. I also have a coffee if you're interested in making a one-time donation to me. I really want to say thank you to everybody who has already helped me by watching my videos, supporting me on Patreon, coffee, for Paige Christie giving me this beautiful microphone, and to everybody who has commented, subscribed, watched my videos. I love hanging out with you all, and I'll be back again to do it real soon. Bye.